All right. So today, everybody gets to live without Skip for like a couple episodes, as I have a new guest speaker for the Humanize IT podcast, Sean Lardo from ConnectWise or some company like that. So, Sean, tell us a little bit about yourself before we get kicked off here. Fair warning to everyone listening: Sean and I speak a lot. Sean is evidently somebody like me, so much like Skip, we're going to have to fight over each other this whole episode. I'm pretty sure.
Yes, thank you. I've got better at knowing my place, especially having four daughters.
There you
Um,
go.
I've learned when I can and can't talk. I mean, they tell me basically.
You
My
shouldn't
24 year
talk.
old, yeah, like my 24-year-old daughter, she's like, listen, why are you talking right now? You sound ridiculous. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm amazing, and I am. But I've learned to stop. But anyway, thanks for having me on. This is you and I have been working together for the past 2 months now. We're almost two
Yeah,
months into
somewhere on
this.
there.
We're like 2 months into this. That's it's like an anniversary. We should probably have a celebration.
I just had my 5-year anniversary for as a business.
That's
So
congratulations.
my
Um,
book, I mean, record player, which I was listening to when you first started in. So, but Sean and I got to know each other through a program called Pitch It. I don't even remember who originally told me you need to apply to Pitch It and get kicked off. I've got it in my email somewhere. I talked to somebody at ConnectWise last November, and they said, "Hey, you should try out for Pitch It, with your new product." And I said, "What is that?" And they connected me with the right people, and now here I am as one of the contestants this year. So,
I know, right? And
can you tell
okay,
me a
you
little
did
bit
ask me about me. You asked me about me, so I guess I'll tell you a little bit about me, and we can move on. So again, Sean Lardo, I'm the ConnectWise economy evangelist. So really, what I focus on is, and I've been in the channel space for a long time. I've worked with vendors and MSPs for 15 years now at this point almost. And the goal for us as an organization, for one, is to make it easier for, we put three promises out there. It's probably the easiest way to explain it. Last year, our CEO put out the three promises of easier to work with, to do business with. The second one was invest even more into partner growth. And then the third was more innovations faster. And, and that's all part of my core beliefs anyway. I've been a very big advocate and a proponent and the recipient and a victim and a culprit of not having the right processes in place and the right technologies in place to simplify people's workload to have, repeatable, scalable business models. So, and having all the right resources at play. In my life, I've worked with a bunch of different startup companies that I've worked with actually, as being basically whether they're channel chief or their VP sales and marketing. And I've had some pretty good success in those realms. I love working with, and so this is a natural evolution for Pitch It with me, of course, because of this. I love business owners, especially startups, because there's so much passion still involved because most people created this themselves. It's their baby. They can see the end result. They love it. And it's so much pride involved. So I love that aspect behind it. Yeah. Like I said, four daughters, two granddaughters. I spent 9 years in the Army. And I didn't do any technology stuff there. I did demolitions and ammunition and ranges. And like, I liked all that stuff. And so, yeah, it was going into technology was happenstance for me. Some years later, when a friend of mine referred me to a third party development company for the Microsoft native suites like Silverlight and ASP.NET and WinForms and stuff. And it was a small company out of where I live here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And my interview with the guy, he said, "What do you know about software?" And I was like, "Well, I know we use a website for our fantasy football league, and I know." Um, and so I used that.
Clicking the hard drives.
Yeah. And
Have
I,
you seen
yeah.
IT? Have you seen IT Crowd?
Yes.
Where she's interviewing and like the clicking, the typing.
Yeah, exactly. I'm good at that stuff. And that's basically how the interview went. And he was like, okay. And I was like, but you know what, though? I'm going to win my league because I'm the most on it on the website and I can look up data and research players. And he was like, awesome. We can talk about it. And he gave me a job. This guy was later became my mentor. And I learned how to work with technology at that point, and it put me in a great place for where I realized probably one of the most important things I could do is build relationships, especially when I didn't know anything. Nothing worse, nothing best and worse than feeling like you don't know anything. But the best thing you can do is walk in and say, I don't know anything to somebody like you, because most people are willing to offer help and will take you under their wing and show you and introduce you to friends. Because I'm like, oh, look how cute he is. He doesn't know anything. And I totally took advantage of that. I leveraged it. It worked out well. And here I am 15 years later.
Yeah, that's where I am today. And I know you and I talked about this a while ago, but is like I walked into this MSP community like not knowing anybody. Now corporate world, when it came to corporate software, corporate circles and stuff like that, I got pretty decently known.
Right.
But then I walked into this new social bubble, and like I am nobody here. And I remember pitching some ideas from a VCIO standpoint to some of these MSPs, and like, well, who are you? I'm like, well, we're Virtual C, we're a consulting company. We just got started a couple of years ago, and they're like, oh, well, we should sit down and talk. And it was an uphill battle because no
Yes.
one had even heard of Adam Walter or
Right.
Virtual C in this space, and so getting introductions, learning about people, learning the ecosystem, what do these people actually care about, it's been fun.
It
It's
is.
been refreshing for an IT guy who's been around for 20 years. You kind of seen it all. Then you headed to this new space where there's so much more to learn.
There, yeah. And well, think about the, I always, I joke around and say corporate America is LinkedIn. MSP world is Facebook and Reddit.
Yeah.
And look how, and look in the manner in which you conduct yourself on both.
Hmm.
It's the same difference between writing an email where you write a formal email because it's a letter, right? As opposed to if I just text you or send you a message on Slack or Teams or whatever, I can be short sighted on it. I can be 50 characters and be like, hey, Adam, what do you got going on? And you can respond. But if I write you an email, I have to make sure it's formal and everything is in it, right? It's the difference in the manner in which you approach it is very different. Like corporate America is vastly different. Uh, ultimate same goals, growth, good service, and whatnot, but the relationships are just different.
So I took a class in my MBA course because every IT person has to drop out of a program. So I dropped out of an MBA program. Anyways, one of the most
Congrats.
insightful programs or classes I took there was on corporate culture and relationship building, and I recommend this class to everyone. And she put things into a way that I never really thought before. And so corporate America is kind of high context, which means that everybody kind of knows what everybody else is doing. So there's this formality, and I know that Sean's going to do this today. And I don't have to ask him about it. I don't have to tell him to do it. I know it's going to get done today because we've been doing it this way for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's just this giant battleship going down in the ocean. It's just really hard to turn because everybody knows what they're doing. And so you just little nudges. Now, a low context, I have to explain everything. We're all agile. We're all talking back and forth all the time because, you and I don't know each other. We just started working together. We've maybe
Right.
known each other for a couple of months. Now I have to explain where am I coming from? Where am I going? Explain my vision. So there's all this traction methodology, this EOS, this how do we make sure that everybody knows what their ball is that they're carrying? And I love that world. I love this world where you have to have a high level of communication.
Absolutely.
In the corporate world, I can work with somebody and not say a word or never even have met them, and my job can rely on what they're doing and
Yeah.
never having to talk to them.
Well, you're a cog in the machine. That machine is
You are.
humongous, right? And by the way, I'm a huge fan of EOS. I think because the one thing you see with small business owners, they know they have a vision, they know they can go do it. They're good when they do it by themselves, but once they start adding staff on, they have a difficulty of scaling and being repeatable, right? Because they don't understand how to do it. So I feel like EOS is so good for framework and discipline. First off, I learned when I started doing EOS was years ago. I didn't know what it was. The our chief operator, our COO, of course, was the person saying we're going to do EOS. So every meeting we were going through the process of what's going on with rocks and whatnot, and I was like, wow, this is a lot of work at first, but then you become used to it, and you're able to set goals and expectations, future ongoing, and also hold people accountable, which is amazing. And at least because I feel like you could easily be in the Wild West, right? When you're
You
doing
can
this, like because
easily
you can go
lose
in so many different directions, and all of a sudden you're like, what did I even do today? What is my even job now? I don't even know.
Yeah, EOS is some of the inspiration behind the Humanize IT framework. So as you dive more into what we're doing, you're going to see a lot of you like, oh, that just makes sense. It's
Yep.
because we originally were agile consultants and VCIO consultants. So that was the birth of our company. And then I saw something. There's this 90.io. If you've never used it, it's a great traction tool for running meetings. It's free for peer groups,
Huh.
and it's fantastic. And so the idea was to take this framework of accountability and add a tool on it where every week you say, where am I? And where are you? And whose eyes do I look into for accountability? So we broke things into 4 pillars and said, okay, who is responsible for these? So the account manager can say, where are we at on this so I can give the client an update? And it's nothing earth shattering, but it's so simple and it's so much into the accountability spectrum. And that's what's kind of missing is we tend to, we're in this low context organization and everybody's working really hard, but are they working hard on the right things? And when a
Yep.
ball gets dropped, is it because somebody didn't know it was in their hands? Was there not a handoff process? And so we need to make that more mature because we have these fantastic MSPs out there who are really great at operations. If I give them a firewall, they will build it and they'll make it world class. They'll do everything they need to it. They know exactly what to do there. However, they don't know who to give it to.
Sure. That's not
And they don't
uncommon.
know which modules to turn on that are going to best benefit the client. And that's a different conversation. You can have the best in class firewall sitting at a ice cream shop, $20,000, but it does nothing for that ice cream shop. And
No.
so that's why I loved EOS. EOS says, well, what really matters to you?
Right. Well, with the end in mind, which is a business outcome, a business, use case. I always talk about use cases, right? And people struggle with use cases. They want to get into the feature conversation. But I don't understand that. If I'm not from your world and you're talking about things, like when was the last time you sat down with your doctor and they explained everything in Latin? When was the last time that happened? They don't. They're like, hey, you got a broken leg. Okay. And that's what they say. Oh, that's it. You have a broken leg. We're going to put a cast on it. They
I'm
don't talk
married to
about,
a pharmacist, so half of what she says is Latin. So
perfect. But think about it, like they say you have a broken leg, we're gonna put a cast on it. They don't tell you what the cast is made of,
correct.
unless the only time you see any conversation around that is that they say, "Oh, you're more athletic, so we're gonna put this type of new construction on there, which is this, and this is what it does." But they say what it does for you. That's the difference,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what that's one of the things as we're going through pitch it. You can hear people talking. Some people are very regimented in technology conversation, right, and features, and that's fine if there's a question about a feature. But what I want to know is what problem does it solve for me?
Yep.
Why are you in existence? Right? Why is this business in existence? What does it do for people? What
I'm
problem
on
did
a
you
mission
solve?
from God.
Ah, yes, agreed. And that's the thing.
It was that or
Again,
the Bloody Christ. I couldn't figure out which one to go for.
uh, I think they're all on the table at this point. You know, but honestly, I'm spot on with you. Like I totally like when we did our stuff the other day, where we did the webinar with you. Like you said the right things that people want to hear. Nobody cares about the after. They care about like if you don't catch them in the first 10 seconds. Hey, I'm here to solve this. You
Mm-hmm.
have this problem. Awesome. It's kind of like when you call the plumber shows up. They're like, we're here to fix your drains. The end. Okay, cool. Come on in. You have my attention. You're fixing my stuff. Thank you. They're not, hey, we brought this new contraption which does A, B, C, and it's awesome, made of this material. Nobody cares.
No, if you can say, "Hey, I'm going to replace your toilet with one that will never clog," sold.
The end.
Don't
Done.
don't, don't even tell me the price.
Right.
No, I just need to know like this thing was never going to clog, so your kids are not going to be
That's
calling
exact.
dad, and you're like, crap.
Also, well, I would also go one step beyond and say if it also lowered the toilet seat itself. With having all girls, if it lowered the toilet seat every time I use it, I done. I'll buy it right now. Put it in. Yeah, it automatically lowers. Perfect. I'm in.
Sweet. Yeah, I mean, but that's the solution, and
It is.
we try so hard to teach people. Sometimes we get to these sales meetings and people are like, how do I automate this conversation? And I'm like, immediately, I'm like, yeah, we're not a fit for you. There's some other great products for you. You're not going to be a culture fit for us.
I agree with
And
that. I
I
love
know
that.
exactly where this relationship's going to go. 6 months from now, you're going to hate us because we're asking you to actually have conversations. And our goal is to guide the conversation. And I'm starting a new tagline, I think. It's probably the first podcast you guys hear it on. We're turning account managers into VCIOs. We
I
can
like
turn
that.
any account manager into a VCIO with a couple hours of work.
Well, that makes so much sense logically. For one, usually the account manager has the relationship. Two, the account manager has a selfish motivation to learn more and push further because they're usually compensated based off growth on cross selling, upselling, and whatnot. Three, they also have the selfish motivation. If they want to maintain a solid relationship, they got to make sure they do checks and balances with them. So they do their QBRs to see what's happening, right? I think that's awesome. I can see the relevance to it, of course. I think some people will disagree with you because they'll say that they need to have technology experience. They need to be the guy or the woman that has the degree and has worked for Fortune 500 companies as a CIO. But I
Mhm.
don't think that's the case. You can
It's
be if
definitely
you have
not
the
the
right
case.
team supporting you.
I took an environmental scientist as an intern a couple, well, 7 years ago, and turned her into a cybersecurity analyst. And that was an intern.
Wow,
And she ended up as an analyst. It's not about the resume, it's about the person. If you've got an
agree.
account manager who's charming, who genuinely cares about your clients,
Mm-hmm.
everything else will fall in line. You've got engineers with 20, 30, 40 years of experience under their belts, backing them up, sitting behind them. It's like at a doctor's office, the doctor knows a lot, but guess who does most of the patient interaction? The nurse,
Correct.
because they're good
Right?
at it.
Yep, they have the
Care
relationship.
about the
They
patient.
have
The doctor
bedside
cares about
manners.
the analytics.
Agreed. Agreed. But they also, what nurses are good at, and this is exactly what an account manager is good at, which is exactly what the VCIO piece is connecting the dots as well.
Yes.
Okay, I can hear what you're saying, what you're asking for. I understand your pain. Let me tell you about how this journey is, what it's going to consist of. Part of it's going to be me working with you, but let me introduce you to Adam that takes care of this. He's the guy responsible for this. So, and I'm also going to, and here's the chart that I give to the doctor, by the way, on all of your vitals. I'm giving to my staff.
So do you read any Sherlock Holmes?
I know I do not. I probably should though.
So
I've watched the
in,
movies.
in Sherlock Holmes, the books, he refers to it as keeping a clean attic. So if
Hmm.
you ask Sherlock Holmes what the 8 planets of the solar system are, he couldn't answer you. But if you ask him about the chemical makeup of tobacco, he'll give you a detailed analysis. And it's because, and there's also a book out there, Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, and it's all about filling your brain with a context so you can connect the dots. But if you
Yep.
care about everything, if your brain is full of this just trash of knowledge, connecting the dots is really hard because you're so busy.
Yep.
But if you're focused and your brain is focused on these areas, if I'm worried about how to fix a firewall and that knowledge is in my head, and my knowledge of how to replace a PC is in my head, and my knowledge of how to do a proper budgets worksheet is in my head, where's the room for the creativity so that I can focus on how to put all these big pieces together?
There's none.
It's like working in assembly versus working in C. You can do a lot more in C, but you can't get the details like you can assembly. And you move
Right.
up a level, when you get to a WYSIWYG, what's the power of a WYSIWYG versus working in .NET? There's different powers to it. And you can do really cool things. The internet didn't get really cool until WYSIWYG started really like upgrading. Like the stuff
Yeah.
we do in HubSpot, it's not the greatest platform, but I can do some amazing things from a high standpoint because I'm architecting
Agreed.
rather than micromanaging.
Well, there's a difference between strategic and tactical, right? That's exactly what we're talking about here. When you get a platform where you're connecting dots and you're trying to determine things, you're basing things off a strategy of what the outcome is you're trying to get to. But then the tactical piece that appears is how do you actually achieve the strategy, right? And actually going back to your point of the attic, clean out your attic. Remember the show Married with Children?
Yep.
So there was an episode, and this is like one of my favorite things I ever watched. It was so funny. So it was Bud and Kelly were the children, right?
Mhm.
And Al Bundy says, "Hey, we got to get Kelly smarter, basically, because she's just a rock, right?" So Bud, being he's a brainiac in the show, and they show him working with Kelly day on day out. And they're trying to get ready for I forget whatever the event was they were trying to get ready for, but so it's like a month later or whatever it is, and they go back and Al's like, okay, so how do we do? I'm noticing a difference, and Bud goes, okay, so hey Kelly, what's the theory of relativity? And she talks about it. And he's like, what is the medical or what is the chemical composition of X or whatever? And she's rattling off, right? And Albany's like, that's amazing. How did you do that? He goes, you have to understand. And this is a brilliant analogy. He goes, so the thing is, when I shoved all this information in her head, some things had to leave. And then so the doorbell rings and she goes to answer the phone, right? And so he goes, what happened? He goes, think of it like a teacup, right? You pour a bunch of tea in, but eventually, if you keep pouring, some stuff flows out.
Yes.
He's like, so that's what flowed out. So she became a genius in some ways and lost sensibility in other ways. And I think that's spot on. And it comes back to clutter. I am a big proponent of eliminating noise. I think the
Yes.
most important thing you can do is eliminate noise to focus on exactly what it is. And by the way, this comes from somebody with a mild case of ADHD and has kids and does all kind of stuff. It's a big struggle for me at times, right? So what I have to do at some point is clear everything off of my schedule, clear everything off of my browsers, clear everything everywhere, and look at one thing at a time, right? Let's do one thing. Now, I prioritize. If I have 10 things I got to do, I prioritize based off of um, deadlines. And then from deadlines, I go to value and impact. And then I go to what's the easiest thing to do? What can I knock out quickly, right? And if I can look at those things, I can decipher like, okay, I have a deadline for Thursday for one thing. I have a deadline for Friday for the other thing. The other thing, they both have equal value, but the thing for Friday will take me 10 minutes to do. The thing for Thursday is going to take me 24 hours to do. So in that case, I do the second thing due on Friday first because it's only 10 minutes. And at least it gets me moving too, by the
A
way.
dopamine burst.
Yep. Yeah, you need it. It's the same thing as solving riddles. Have you ever tried solving riddles? The first time you try to solve a riddle today, if you and I sat down and did a riddle, I would be perplexed for a while. I'd be like, you have to get into that mindset. After you do a few in a row, you then start you expand your ability to think outside the box and the creativity and see the angles. But it requires you to do it. You know, it's not something you just do naturally. Same rules apply. And it is that dopamine hit. Once you get it, you want to do the next thing. Just like getting sales. You just got a sale. Best time to get a sale as soon as is right after you got one because you're
Another
ready to
tip,
go.
my wife kind of got this from a podcast she listened to called Fly Lady, and it was instead of thinking of your task as 24 hours, think of it as 15 minutes. I will work on this task for 15 minutes. And
Yeah.
if you start a timer, you're like, that's not as daunting. And then you
Right.
get so much done in that 15 minutes, you get that immediate dopamine burst. And then you're like, oh, now I'm on a roll.
Yep. And you'll finish the
And if the
project.
timer goes off and you haven't kind of gotten into the mindset yet, that's okay. Move on to something else.
Yep.
And
Come
then
back later.
come back to that and spend 15 minutes again.
Yep.
And eventually you're going to start making progress on it.
Uh,
And so
Spot
it's like
on.
cleaning your room. When people say clean the house, no one wants to clean their house. But I could spend 10 minutes picking up.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's my 13-year-old daughter. That's how I get her to clean. I'm like, start with the stuff on the floor. Let's put that somewhere. And then she does that. I'm going to check, but actually going back to your point for 15 minutes, I'm actually working on which you've taken the modes assessment, right? Which tells
That's
you
one of
what,
the 10,000 assessments I've taken.
well, modes is the one we gave you for Pitch It. That was one of the ones you took where it talked about what kind of builder you are, value builder, balance builder, or empire builder, or startup. It was the first 2 weeks of you being with us was the second week. You took the Connect
Mhm.
Strat one, and then you did the modes assessment. And then we had Scott Scroggin on and Arlen Sorensen that spoke about it the week after to talk about what that looked like, whatever
Is
builder
that
you
when I
were.
was gone?
You might have been. Yeah, I think you were gone. Okay,
I have a
so
couple videos I need to catch up on.
yeah, you need to, man. So we when we so for modes, the whole goal about modes is also a part of operational maturity level, right? The OMLs, which is so important back to everything we've already started talking about. So right now, I'm because of my experience and because of what ConnectWise is doing with modes and Evolve is doing with modes, working on building a business plan and like with like a framework on based off what mode you are and what your operational maturity level is, where
Okay.
you should be with sales and marketing as far as people, process, and technology, right?
Okay.
And that's a big deal. And so I'm talking about this because I need to get that 15 minutes in, man. Because I've been sitting there because I can think of a billion things that should be on there. And
Yeah.
as I broke it down, I couldn't break it down at first. So I'm working on that now, and hopefully I'll have it done in the next, I don't know, 10 years. But, no, actually, I hope it'll be done within the next week or two. But that's exactly what I was running into. So I had to clear up all my other stuff so I could actually focus for 15, 20 minutes. But I like that 15-minute concept.
Yeah, I think I'm going to switch the topic of this podcast to business advice with Sean. This has been a great session. We're hitting up on our limit here, and we're going to switch over to part two here. So everybody's going to have to stay in tune for part two, where we continue on this topic, and we're going to be talking about more about what is making the MSP world great today. Like what is going
Yeah.
on with the current class of Pitch It, and what are we looking to change in the MSP world for the better. So thank you, Sean, for today. We'll see everybody in 1 week.
Can't wait.